Clara Moreau stood amidst the splendid chandelier light on the yacht Stella Maris, her white wedding dress clinging to her body, but her heart was as cold as the night sea out there. The arranged marriage with a man she didn't love was just a few vows away, the triumphant look in her father's eyes and the groom's fake smile suffocating her. Then in a moment of madness, she ran, over the railing, down to the lifeboat, cutting the rope and letting the darkness swallow her. She never expected that. At a strange harbor far away, a mysterious man would change everything. Chapter 1. Pressure under the yacht's chandelier. Clara Moreau stood motionless in the grand hall of the yacht Stella Maris, the light from the enormous crystal chandelier overhead cascading down, reflecting off every contour of the pristine white wedding dress clinging to her body. Tiny pearls sewn onto the gown glimmered like frozen teardrops, flashing each time she moved slightly. The clinking of champagne glasses in the hands of the elite guests echoed ceaselessly, mingling with hearty laughter and lively congratulations. But to Clara, all those sounds were like echoes from a distant world, unable to reach her heart, a heart shrinking, cold as if submerged beneath the pitch-black seawater outside. She cast her eyes around slowly, as if wanting to memorize every detail of the golden cage that had confined her for 27 years of her life. The vast hall was decorated with suffocating extravagance. White roses imported from Holland, arranged in circular arches on the banquet tables, crimson silk tablecloths embroidered with shimmering gold thread, and oil paintings hung on polished wooden walls, all exuding the power of the Moreau family, the shipping empire dominating Maine's coast. But to Clara, this wasn't a wedding. It was a business deal wrapped in a luxurious shell where she was merely an item priced by the numbers in a contract between the Moreau and Grayson families. A sacrificial offering to solidify an alliance between two powerful empires. Victor Grayson, her groom, stood a few steps away, tall in a perfectly tailored gray suit, his golden hair slicked back neatly, like a statue molded from arrogance. He smiled, but it was a smile devoid of warmth, a stiff curve on his lips, as if rehearsed to please the crowd rather than express any genuine emotion. Victor's pale blue eyes slid over her, not with affection, but like an appraiser evaluating a bargain purchase. Clara had once hoped in the early days of meeting him 2 years ago that there might be something real between them. She had tried to find a spark in his gaze, a small sign that he saw her as a person, not a contract clause. But no, Victor only talked about new oil wells in Alaska, shares in her father's shipping company, and how he'd expand the Grayson empire through this marriage. To him, she was nothing but a pawn in a larger game. "Clara, stand up straight!" Her mother's voice, Eleanor Moreau, rang out from behind, sharp and cold like the sea wind blowing through cargo ships in the harsh winter. Clara turned her head, meeting her mother's stern gaze through the thin white veil covering her face. She wore a magnificent emerald evening gown, her silver hair elegantly pinned up, her gloved hands gripping a champagne glass, as if it were the only weapon she needed to control the world. "Don't embarrass your father tonight. This is the most important day for the family." Clara swallowed hard, her throat dry, despite not having sipped from the wine glass her mother had forced her to hold for the past hour. "Important to whom, mother?" she whispered, her voice so soft only she could hear it. But her mother's eyes seemed to catch the question, and her thin lips pressed tighter, a wordless warning that she mustn't cross the line. Clara lowered her head, her hands clenching the hem of her dress, trembling fingers brushing against the soft silk. She wanted to scream, to yell in her mother's face that this wasn't the life she wanted, that she wasn't a puppet for the family to manipulate. But she didn't dare. Not because she was afraid, but because she was used to staying silent, used to nodding, used to letting others decide for her. Her father, Charles Moreau, stood near the head table, laughing heartily with a group of businessmen in black suits, men Clara knew were key partners of the Moreau empire. He was tall, his angular face tanned from years commanding ships at sea, but his brown eyes always shone with an unyielding authority. When he glanced at Clara, that look wasn't the affection of a father for his daughter on her wedding day, but the satisfaction of a businessman closing a multi-million-dollar deal. "Victor is the perfect choice, Clara," he'd told her a few weeks ago when she dared to protest this marriage during a rare evening at the family's Portland mansion. "He'll take our family to new heights. You must understand this is your duty." Duty! The word echoed in Clara's mind like church bells, heavy and relentless, pounding into every dark corner of her thoughts. She'd heard it for 27 years. Duty to attend the best boarding school in Switzerland. Duty to maintain the perfect image of a Moreau heiress in the press. Duty to marry a man she didn't love to protect the family empire. But tonight, standing amidst the dazzling chandelier and the gentle violin music from the band in the corner, she felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage, its wings clipped so it could never fly. She wondered if she'd ever truly lived, or if she was just a shadow shaped by her family, a doll dressed in a wedding gown and pushed onto a stage for a play she never wanted to join. In Clara's heart, a silent battle raged. One part of her, the part trained since childhood to obey, to please her parents, whispered that she should move forward, smile at Victor, say "I do" before the priest in the crowd. It was the easy path, the one she'd walked for years, the one that didn't require facing her fears or her family's wrath. But another part, small and fragile like a dying flame, screamed within her. It shouted that she deserved to live, to love, to be free. Things she'd never dared dream of, because every time she did, her parents' voices rose to extinguish them instantly. "Let's begin," Victor's voice sounded beside her ear, pulling her from her chaotic thoughts. He took her hand, his touch dry and cold as stone, leading her toward the ceremonial table at the front of the hall. The guests applauded, the clapping rising like a swelling sea, but to Clara it was like hammer blows sealing her life's coffin. She felt the weight of the engagement ring on her finger, a large, dazzling diamond, cold as Victor himself. She'd once thought it beautiful, gazing at it under the light in the mansion's parlor, and telling herself maybe marriage to him wouldn't be so bad. But now it was just an iron shackle, chaining her to a future she didn't want. The priest, an elderly man with a silver beard and a warm, deep voice, stepped onto the podium, opening the holy book in his hands. "We gather today to witness the union of Clara Moreau and Victor Grayson," he began, his voice resonating through the hall's speakers, spreading to every corner. Clara looked down at the sparkling white high heels on her feet, feeling them tighten around her, invisible needles piercing her soles. She wanted to scream, to run, but her father's gaze from afar was like an unseen rope holding her back. She imagined stepping forward, reciting the vows, living a life with Victor, endless days in a cold mansion, fake parties, children born just to please the family. The thought twisted her stomach, nausea rising in her throat. Victor turned to her, that fake smile reappearing on his lips. "Ready, Clara?" he whispered, his voice tinged with arrogance, as if he'd won a grand game and she was his rightful prize. But in that moment, as her father's triumphant gaze met hers through the crowd, as the applause rose again like a fateful melody, something inside Clara shattered. Not fear, not resignation, but the tiny flame within her, the one she'd tried to smother so many times, now blazed fiercely in her chest. It burned away all reason, all duty, leaving a searing longing. She wanted to live, truly live, if only once in her life. She yanked her hand from Victor's grip, so hard he froze, his smile stiffening like ice. Whispers spread through the crowd, shocked and curious eyes turning to her. But Clara didn't care. She spun around, her wedding dress billowing like a white sail, and bolted toward the yacht's deck. Her high heels clacked rapidly on the wooden floor, drowning out her mother's shout, "Clara, come back now!" But she didn't stop. The night sea breeze blew through, icy but carrying the salty scent of freedom she'd long craved. She heard Victor yell from behind, "What the hell are you doing, Clara?" And the footsteps of staff chasing her, but it all faded like wind passing her ears. She burst onto the rear deck, where the hall's dim light spilled faintly, highlighting the orange lifeboat dangling beside the ship, its ropes swaying in the breeze. Without a second thought, she climbed over the railing, her trembling hands gripping the rope, the silk of her dress scraping against rough metal. Her heart pounded, her breath ragged as if bursting her chest. With a decisive move, she pulled a small folding knife from her dress pocket, a gift from her brother as a child, a keepsake of freedom she always carried, and sliced through the lifeboat's tether. The boat dropped, hitting the water with a loud splash, waves splashing onto her, soaking her gown. Clara jumped after it, her high heels lost somewhere midair, landing awkwardly in the lifeboat as frigid seawater splashed her face. She clung to the edge, gasping, wet hair sticking to her cheeks. The yacht's engines rumbled behind her, the chandelier lights fading like dim specks in the night sky. The waves slapping the boat drowned out the chaos from Stella Maris, her mother's screams, her father's shouts, Victor's curses. Clara sat up, still clutching the rope, watching the yacht's lights blur into the darkness. For the first time in her life, her chest felt light, as if she'd shed a 1,000-pound burden. The sea breeze whipped through, tangling her hair, the white veil flying off into the void. She shivered, not from the cold, but from the first stirrings of freedom within her, a feeling both terrifying and exhilarating, strange yet familiar. She didn't know where she was drifting, what lay ahead. But as the lifeboat rocked on the waves, carrying her away from the chandelier and stifling vows, Clara smiled, her first real smile in months. She had escaped, and this time, she wouldn't let anyone pull her back. Welcome to Soul Stories. Life can be overwhelming, but here we share heartfelt tales to bring you peace, joy, and inspiration. Your support, every comment, like, and follow means the world to us. It motivates us to create more meaningful and uplifting stories just for you. Did our latest story touch your heart? Leave a "I am happy" in the comments if you agree. Subscribe now and be part of a community that spreads love, kindness, and positivity. Let's make every day a little brighter, together. Chapter 2, The Stranger at the Harbor. The orange lifeboat rocked on the waves, drifting through the darkness of the Maine night sea, carrying Clara Moreau away from the lavish lights of the yacht Stella Maris. A cold wind blew through, bringing with it the sharp, salty tang of the sea, tousling her hair and plastering it against her wet face. The white wedding dress, now torn at the hem and soaked with seawater, weighed heavily on her body like a reminder of what she had just left behind. Clara hugged her shoulders, her trembling hands unsure whether they shook from the cold or the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She didn't know how long she had been drifting, perhaps a few minutes, perhaps hours. But when the faint golden glow of a small harbor flickered in the distance, she felt a glimmer of hope flicker in her chest. Clara gripped the plastic paddle attached to the lifeboat, though she didn't really know how to use it. She managed only a few clumsy strokes, letting the boat slowly drift toward the weathered wooden dock of Boothbay Harbor, a place she had never set foot in, a tiny coastal town her family often deemed too insignificant to visit. The boat bumped lightly against the dock, making a dry clack, and Clara nearly toppled over as she tried to step out. Her bare feet, her high heels lost when she jumped from the yacht, touched the damp, icy wood, sending a shiver through her. She tugged at the heavy wedding dress, struggling to keep her balance, and lifted her head to look around. The small harbor was steeped in silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the moored fishing boats and the whistling of the wind through the masts. The golden light from a few lanterns hanging along the dock cast a hazy, faint glow, illuminating the scarred wooden planks and a few old fishing nets piled nearby. There was no one here, or so she thought, until a figure emerged from the far end of the dock, near a small, faded green fishing boat. Clara froze, her heart pounding. The man was tall, about 30 years old, wearing a worn brown sailor's coat and a gray knit cap pulled low over nearly half his forehead. He was tying a rope around a wooden post, his sturdy hands moving swiftly, as if the task were ingrained in his instincts. When the lantern light fell across his face, Clara caught a glimpse of deep blue eyes and a small scar running along his left cheek, accentuating his rugged look. He paused, looked up, and their eyes met. "You look like you just escaped from a Hollywood movie," he said, his voice low and slightly hoarse, carrying a hint of mockery, but no malice. He raised an eyebrow, his gaze sweeping over Clara's pitiful state, torn wedding dress, wet matted hair, and a face pale from the cold. She felt her cheeks heat up, a mix of embarrassment and unease, but she quickly regained her composure. "I just need a place to rest," she replied, her voice trembling, trying to maintain a semblance of confidence despite her legs shaking under the weight of the soaked dress. She didn't want to explain, didn't want to tell a stranger about the golden cage she had just shattered, but his eyes, sharp yet non-judgmental, made her feel as if he could see through her without her saying a word. The man straightened up, dropping the rope onto the dock, and stepped closer. "Name's Ryan. Ryan Callahan," he said, his tone even, as if introducing himself were just a formality. He shrugged off his coat, revealing a faded gray sweater underneath, and handed it to her. "You'll freeze to death standing there in that outfit. It smells a bit like sea salt, but it's better than nothing." Clara hesitated, but the cold gnawing at her flesh left her no choice. She took the coat, feeling the scent of sea salt mixed with faint traces of engine oil and old wood clinging to the fabric. It was rough, unlike any coat she'd ever worn in her life. Not the soft cashmere or expensive mink her mother always chose for her. But as she draped it over her shoulders, the warmth of the wool seeped into her skin, making her breathe a sigh of relief. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the coat tighter around herself. "I'm Clara." Ryan nodded, asking no further questions, as if her name alone were enough for him to accept her strange presence here. "My shack's over there," he said, pointing to a small wooden hut near the dock, its tin roof rusted, its windows clouded with dust. "Not fancy, but warm enough for the night. Want to come in?" Clara followed his gesture, then glanced back at the sea. A flash of fear crossed her mind. The distant hum of an engine, the glare of headlights that might belong to a patrol boat her family had sent to find her. She didn't know who Ryan was, didn't know if she could trust him, but she had nowhere else to go. No money, no phone, just a torn wedding dress and a fragile resolve that she wouldn't return to Stella Maris. She nodded, following him, her bare feet scraping the wooden dock with soft, uneven steps. Inside the wooden shack, the air was warmer, thanks to a small fireplace crackling in the corner. The red flames danced across the scarred wooden walls, lighting up an old table, a few broken chairs, and a thin mattress covered with a wool blanket on the floor. The smell of burning wood mingled with the sea salt from Ryan's coat, filling the room with a strange sensation. Rough but safe, a far cry from the stifling luxury she'd left behind. Ryan pulled out a chair, motioning for her to sit, then grabbed a tin cup from a wooden shelf and poured water from a scratched plastic jug. "You okay?" he asked, setting the cup in front of her. His voice remained steady, but a trace of curiosity lingered beneath it. He sat across from her, hands clasped, his eyes studying her as if trying to solve a puzzle. Clara held the cup, her hands still trembling, but she didn't drink right away. She looked into Ryan's blue eyes, feeling an invisible pressure from his question. Was she okay? She didn't know. She just fled her wedding, her family, a future laid out for her. She should feel free, but instead, she felt like she was floating in a void, with no shore, no direction. I don't know," she replied, her voice so soft it was nearly drowned by the crackling fire. "I just know I couldn't stay there." Ryan nodded, not pressing her further. He stood, grabbed an old wool blanket from the corner, and handed it to her. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but if your family comes looking, I need to know so I can be ready." Clara froze, her heart beating faster. "They'll find me," she said, her voice shaky. "They won't let me go that easily. If someone asks, could you pretend to be my husband?" She blurted it out without thinking, driven by the rising fear of being dragged back to Stella Maris like a wave crashing over her. Ryan looked at her, his blue eyes narrowing for a moment. Then he laughed, a hoarse, brief, warm laugh. "Pretend to be your husband? Might as well get married for real, save the trouble," he said, his tone teasing, but his eyes held a seriousness she hadn't expected. Clara opened her mouth to argue, but then stopped. The idea, crazy, absurd, suddenly struck a chord in her mind. If she married someone else, a complete stranger, her family would have no reason to force her back to Victor. It would be a shield, an escape she'd never considered. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice lowering, her eyes probing his face. Ryan shrugged, that lopsided smile still there. "I've got nothing to lose. You?" Clara fell silent, staring at the cup in her hands. She had nothing left to lose. No family, no reputation, not even her old self. In an impulsive moment, she nodded. Fine, let's get married for real. Ryan stood, no hesitation, as if he were used to reckless decisions. Town hall's 2 streets away. They work late. Coming? He held out his hand, and Clara, for some reason, took it. They left the shack, walking under the faint golden dock lights, the sea breeze making Ryan's coat flap over her shoulders. Boothbay Harbor's small town hall was an old brick building, its fluorescent lights flickering through the windows. An elderly clerk, his face creased with wrinkles, yawned as they entered. "Marriage registration?" he asked, his sleepy voice tinged with doubt as his eyes scanned Clara's torn wedding dress and Ryan's worn coat. Clara nodded, her heart pounding as she signed her name on the paper, next to Ryan Callahan's scrawled signature. No flowers, no guests, no music, just the scratch of the pen and the clerk's curious stare. Ryan pulled a scrap of old rope from his pocket, tying it around her finger to make a crude ring. "There, it's done," he said, his voice gentle but with a touch of humor. Clara looked at the rope ring, feeling both amused and strange. This was her wedding, not on a grand yacht, but in a shabby office with a stranger she'd known for less than 2 hours. They stepped outside, the harbor moonlight casting a silvery sheen over them. Ryan turned to her, a simple but warm smile on his lips. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Callahan," he said, his tone playful but his eyes oddly sincere. Clara looked at him, her heart racing uncontrollably. His smile, rough, imperfect, but real, made her wonder if she'd just stepped into a dream or a nightmare. She didn't know who Ryan Callahan was, didn't know what she'd just done with her life. But under the harbor moonlight, with the rope ring on her finger, she felt a tiny spark, a sense of freedom she'd never known, waiting for her to explore. Chapter 3. Freedom on the Open Sea. The first light of dawn pierced through the thin sea mist, illuminating the fishing boat Blue Horizon, a small but sturdy wooden vessel, its blue paint faded by time. Clara Moreau stood on the deck, her bare feet gripping the damp wooden floor, feeling each gentle wave lap against the boat's side. The salty sea breeze blew through, carrying the chill of early morning, sending her hair flying wildly in the air, tangled strands she didn't bother to fix. The faded gray t-shirt, a worn-out item she'd borrowed from Ryan, flapped in the wind, completely replacing the lavish wedding dress now just a distant memory. Clara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, letting the scent of sea salt and freedom fill her lungs. It was her 3rd day aboard the boat with Ryan Callahan, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Ryan emerged from the lower cabin, holding 2 steaming tin coffee mugs. He wore a threadbare green sweater and faded jeans, his feet bare like hers, as if both had melded into the rhythm of sea life without any rules from the mainland. "Daydreaming this early?" he asked, his warm, deep voice laced with a hint of teasing, handing her a mug. Clara smiled, taking it, feeling the metal's warmth seep through her cold palms. "I'm not dreaming," she replied, sipping the bitter yet fragrant coffee, the cheap supermarket kind Ryan brewed on the old gas stove in the cabin. "I'm just feeling." She looked out at the sea where the deep blue waters stretched endlessly, the morning sunlight shattering on the waves like thousands of tiny sparkling diamonds. The cries of seagulls echoed overhead, their white wings gliding lazily in the sky, as if welcoming a new day on the ocean. Ryan leaned against the boat's railing, sipping his coffee, his deep blue eyes gazing far off toward the horizon. "Feeling what?" he asked, his tone gentle but tinged with curiosity, as if he genuinely wanted to know what was stirring in her mind. Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. "Freedom," she finally said, her voice low but firm. "I never knew what it was like until now." She turned to him, her eyes lighting up in the early glow. "You wouldn't understand, Ryan. I've lived 27 years in a cage. A beautiful cage, but still a cage. Everything was set for me. School, friends, even the person I had to marry. But here," she stretched out her hand, letting the breeze slip through her fingers. "Here, I feel like myself." Ryan smiled, that familiar lopsided grin now softened with a touch of tenderness. "The sea has a way of doing that to people," he said, his voice deep like the waves. "It doesn't care who you are, how much money you have, or what your family wants. It's just there, vast and non-judgmental. He pointed toward the distant horizon, where the pale blue sky blended into the sea. Out here, you can be whoever you want to be. Clara followed his gesture, her heart beating faster. Ryan's words felt like a promise, a door opening that she'd never dared dream of. She was no longer Clara Moreau, heiress of a shipping empire, the youngest daughter bound to obey her parents. Here on Blue Horizon, she was just Clara, a free woman, unbound by chandeliers or stifling vows. That day, Ryan began teaching her how to live on the sea. He led her to the fishing nets hanging over the boat's side, rough ropes thick with the smell of salt and seaweed. "Pull this up," he said, pointing to a line tied tightly to the net. Clara grabbed the rope, her soft hands, once accustomed to holding pens and champagne glasses, clumsily tugging hard. The net rose from the water, bringing up a school of small silver fish that thrashed in the air. She burst into laughter, a natural, unrestrained sound she'd never heard from herself before. The fish splashed water onto her, wetting her t-shirt, but she didn't care. She felt life pulsing in every wriggling fish in her hands, a vitality she'd never experienced at lavish parties or closed-door family meetings. "You're a quick learner," Ryan said, standing beside her with a satisfied smile. He bent down, expertly untangling the fish from the net with practiced hands, tossing them into an old wooden crate on the deck. "Tomorrow I'll teach you to steer the boat. Nothing beats holding the wheel out at sea." Clara nodded, her eyes shining. She couldn't wait. They spent the day on deck, working together in comfortable silence, hauling nets, tying ropes, wiping down the deck when waves splashed over. The sun climbed higher, its warm rays coating her skin, drying the lingering seawater. The salty breeze blew through, carrying the ocean's breath, caressing her skin like a gentle touch. Clara forgot the wedding dress, the expensive high heels, the controlling gazes of her parents. She walked barefoot on the wooden deck, feeling each rough grain under her soles, laughing loudly whenever the wind tangled her hair into a chaotic mess. By afternoon, they dropped anchor near a calm stretch of water, and Ryan pulled 2 old fishing rods from the cabin. "Fishing at sunset is something you've got to try," he said, handing her one. They sat side by side on the boat's edge, legs dangling over the water, rods held loosely in their hands. The sun sank slowly, painting the sky a blazing red, streaks of orange and pink reflecting on the sea like a giant mirror. Clara gazed at the scene, feeling as if time had stopped, leaving just her and Ryan in the endless ocean. "Have you ever thought you'd live like this?" Ryan asked, his warm voice blending with the sound of waves against the boat. He reeled in his line, a small fish hooked on the end, its silver scales glinting in the sunset. Clara shook her head, her eyes fixed on the fiery horizon. "Never. I thought my life would be parties, contracts, and a marriage I didn't want. But here," she paused, taking a deep breath, "here, I feel like I can be anyone. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to please anybody." Ryan nodded, his deep blue eyes flickering with something profound, as if he understood her more than she realized. "I thought I'd live a different life too," he said, his voice softening. "But the sea changed me. It gave me horizons yet to explore, days without needing money or fame, just me and the ocean." He looked out at the sea, his gaze distant, as if recalling far-off journeys he hadn't fully shared. Clara turned to him, curious. "What do you dream of, Ryan? Out here on this open sea?" Ryan gave a soft laugh, a rare, gentle smile. "I dream of places I haven't been, nameless islands, seas no one knows. I want to live unbound, with no one telling me what to do or who to be. Just me, this boat, and freedom." He looked at her, his eyes brightening. "And you?" Clara fell silent, thinking. She'd never been asked that. No one in her family cared what she dreamed or wanted. But now, amid the sea, it became clearer than ever. "I want a life not defined by family or society," she said, her voice steady. "I want to wake up each day and feel alive, like this, with the sea breeze and sunlight. I want to be myself, not someone others expect me to be." Ryan nodded, saying nothing more, but his eyes seemed to say he understood. They sat there, fishing under the blazing sunset, the waves lapping gently like the ocean's lullaby. As the sun dipped below the horizon, giving way to a boundless starry sky, they reeled in their rods and returned to the cabin. Ryan stoked the fireplace, the smell of wood smoke mingling with sea salt filling the small space. He brewed more coffee, and they sat across from each other, talking about the far-off trips Ryan had taken, storms at sea, days adrift without sight of land, his deep voice like the waves, drawing Clara into stories she'd never imagined. Night fell, and they lay on the deck, gazing at a sky twinkling with stars like millions of gems scattered on black velvet. The waves rocked the boat lightly, a soothing rhythm that filled Clara with an odd peace. She forgot Stella Maris, forgot Victor, forgot her parents' controlling stares. Here in the ocean, she was part of something greater, freer. At the day's end, with Ryan asleep in the cabin, Clara rose and stepped onto the deck alone. She gripped the helm, feeling the rough wood under her hands, letting the sea breeze brush her skin. The starry sky stretched before her, the sea shimmering under silver moonlight. She smiled, thinking this was where she wanted to stay forever, with Ryan amid the boundless sea. No golden cage, no duties, just her and the ocean, where she could be herself, nothing more, nothing less. Chapter 4. The Secret Beneath the Sailor's Guise. 6 months had passed since Clara Moreau stepped onto Blue Horizon, the small fishing boat that had become her home amidst the open sea. Each day on the boat was a symphony of freedom, the sound of waves lapping against the wooden sides, the cries of seagulls ringing through the sky, and her laughter blending with Ryan Callahan's warm, deep voice. They had lived like ocean wanderers, unbound, without direction, guided only by the salty wind and sunlight. Clara had now mastered hauling nets, steering the boat, and reading nautical charts, skills she once thought were reserved for those born at sea, not a refined lady raised in a lavish mansion. But today, amid that peace, a secret shook the small world they had built. The morning began like any other. The sun had just risen above the horizon, casting a radiant golden sheen across the deep blue sea. Clara sat on the deck, her bare feet propped on the railing, holding an old fishing rod Ryan had given her the day before. The sea breeze blew through, tousling her long brown hair, now faded from sun and salt. She wore Ryan's familiar gray t-shirt and ripped jeans, bearing no trace of the heiress Moreau, who once stood under the chandelier on Stella Maris. Ryan was below deck, the clanking of his work on the engine echoing up, a daily task he performed to keep Blue Horizon ready for their far-flung journeys. Clara yawned, set the rod down, and decided to go below for more coffee. She descended the small wooden steps, the dim light from an oil lamp hanging overhead, illuminating the scratched wooden floor. Ryan was bent over the engine, wrench in hand, his green sweater smudged with oil. "Need anything?" he asked without looking up, his voice even as always. "Coffee," Clara replied, smiling. She stepped past him to the corner of the cabin, where a small wooden table was cluttered with odds and ends, charts, ropes, a few worn books with tattered spines. As she bent to grab the coffee pot, a small wooden box slid off the shelf above, hitting the floor with a clack, its lid popping open. Clara froze, crouching to pick it up, and then stiffened when she saw what was inside. A shiny brass U.S. Navy insignia rolled out of the box, glinting under the oil lamp's light. Next to it was an old photo, its edges yellowed, showing a young man in a naval officer's uniform, short black hair, deep blue eyes, and a small scar along his left cheek. Clara frowned, her heart beating faster. It was Ryan, no doubt about it, but not the Ryan she knew, not the wandering sailor with a worn coat and lopsided grin. This was a different Ryan, stern and dignified, from a world he'd never mentioned. "Ryan," she called, her voice trembling, holding the photo and insignia. He looked up, a flicker of wariness in his blue eyes when he saw what she held. He set the wrench down, straightened up, and wiped his hands on his sweater with forced calm. "You found it," he said, his voice lowering. Not a question, but a confirmation. He walked over, sitting on the wooden chair across from her, his hands clasped on the table, as if bracing for a conversation he'd postponed too long. "What is this?" Clara asked, her voice rising above normal, her eyes fixed on the photo. "Who are you, Ryan? Who are you really?" She placed the insignia and photo on the table, feeling as if the boat's floor were tilting beneath her, though the sea was calm today. Ryan sighed, a heavy breath that seemed to carry the weight of a buried past. "I'm Ryan Callahan," he began, his tone even but tinged with bitterness. "The only son of Edward Callahan, chairman of Callahan Shipyards, the biggest shipbuilding company in the Northeast U.S. I was a naval officer, served 3 years before. I left." Clara blinked, her mind reeling. Callahan Shipyards, that name wasn't unfamiliar. The Moreau family had collaborated with them on several major shipping projects, and she recalled her father mentioning Edward Callahan as a powerful, cold, uncompromising man. But Ryan, the simple man with calloused hands from fishing nets and a hoarse laugh, was his son? She shook her head, trying to process it. "Why didn't you tell me? For 6 months, you let me think you were just a wandering sailor." Ryan looked at her, his deep blue eyes now filled with complexity. "Because I didn't want to be that person anymore," he said, his voice dropping. 2 years ago, my father arranged a marriage for me with the daughter of a big business partner, a girl I'd never met, just to strengthen the company. I refused, but he wouldn't accept it. He said it was my responsibility, that I was born to inherit Callahan Shipyards, not to live my own life. I couldn't take it, Clara. I left, bought Blue Horizon with my last savings, and chose the sea over wealth. Clara fell silent, staring at him. A storm of emotion surged within her. She was angry that he'd hidden this from her, that he'd let her believe they were alike, both fugitives from ordinary paths. But at the same time, a deep empathy crept into her heart. He was like her, someone trapped in a gilded cage, forced into a loveless marriage, defined by family. She recalled her father's triumphant look on Stella Maris, Victor's fake smile, and the suffocating pressure she'd endured. Ryan wasn't just the man who saved her from that harbor night. He was someone who understood her, more than anyone ever had. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked again, her voice softer, but still tinged with hurt. "I told you everything, about Victor, about my family, and you kept this from me." Ryan lowered his head, his hands tightening. "I didn't want you to see me as a Callahan," he said, his voice hoarse. "I was afraid you'd think I was like them, people who live for money and power. Out here on the sea, I'm just Ryan. Not someone's son, not an heir to anything. I wanted you to know me as me, not my past." Clara looked at him, her heart softening. She understood that fear of being defined by family, by others' expectations. She stood, stepped closer, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I don't care if you're a Callahan or anyone else," she said, her voice firm. "I only care that you're the one who gave me freedom, who's been with me these 6 months." She gave a small smile, though her eyes still held a hint of doubt. "But from now on, don't hide anything from me, okay?" Ryan looked up, his eyes bright with gratitude. He took her hand, pulling her to sit beside him. "Okay," he whispered, and in that moment, the distance between them seemed to melt away. They sat there under the faint oil lamp's glow, sharing dreams and pains they'd once kept hidden. Clara spoke of nights she'd cried in her mansion bedroom, the pressure to be perfect. Ryan told of his days wandering the sea after leaving home, the mix of freedom and loneliness. The love between them, which had grown quietly over their days on Blue Horizon, deepened, nourished by an understanding they hadn't anticipated. But that peace didn't last. One afternoon, 6 months after Clara fled Stella Maris, as Blue Horizon anchored near a small port off Maine, a large ship appeared on the horizon. Clara was hauling nets with Ryan when she heard the engines roar, distinct from the familiar sound of waves. She looked up, her heart pounding as the ship drew near, a sleek white yacht bearing the Callahan Shipyards emblem on its hull. Ryan straightened, his blue eyes darkening. "They found me," he said, his voice low, carrying a tension Clara hadn't heard before. The ship stopped a few dozen meters from Blue Horizon, and an older man stepped onto the deck, dressed in a black suit, his silver hair neatly combed back. Clara didn't need to ask to know who he was. Edward Callahan, Ryan's father, with the same cold, commanding presence she'd seen in her own father. "Ryan!" Edward's voice blared through the loudspeaker, sharp and unrelenting. Enough playing around. Come home now and end this ridiculous marriage farce. You're the heir to Callahan's shipyards, not some wandering sailor." Clara felt the blood in her veins turn cold. She looked at Ryan, seeing him grip the railing, his knuckles whitening. "I'm not going back," he shouted, his voice echoing across the water. "I told you 2 years ago. I don't want that company, that life." Edward descended to a small dinghy, directing it toward blue horizon. When he boarded, Clara felt the weight of his gaze, and gaze like her father's, full of authority and intolerant of defiance. "You think you can run forever?" Edward said, his voice low but cutting like a knife. "And this girl," he glanced at Clara, his eyes contemptuous. "Who is she? Some runaway bride you picked up at a dock? End the marriage now, Ryan, or I'll cut you off from everything you have." Clara held Ryan's hand, feeling the warmth of his palm despite their shared tension. She wanted to say something, to shout at Edward that she wasn't the girl he thought, but Ryan spoke first. He stepped forward, facing his father, his blue eyes blazing. "I choose the sea, not money," he said, his voice solid as rock. "Cut whatever you want. I don't need Callahan's shipyards. I have everything I want right here." Edward's lip curled into a cold smile. "You'll regret this," he said, then turned and stepped back onto the dinghy without looking back. The Callahan ship pulled away, leaving blue horizon in heavy silence. Clara looked at Ryan, seeing him breathing hard, but his eyes remained resolute. He turned to her, squeezing her hand, his warmth spreading through her skin. "You okay?" she asked, her voice small but full of concern. "Fine," he replied, a faint smile breaking through despite his trembling lips. "As long as you're here." Clara felt her heart bind to him more than ever. They stood on the deck, hand in hand, watching the Callahan ship vanish beyond the horizon. The sea stretched wide before them, and though the past had caught up, Clara knew they wouldn't let it steal the freedom they'd found. Chapter 5. Pressure from Two Families. 6 months on blue horizon had made Clara Moreau and Ryan Callahan an inseparable part of the open sea. Two souls who found freedom and love amid the deep blue waves. But the sea, vast and unrestrained as it was, couldn't shield them forever from the shadows of their past. One late autumn morning, as the sun rose above the horizon, painting the sky a brilliant streak of orange, the distant roar of engines shattered their peace. Clara was brewing coffee on the old gas stove in the cabin, while Ryan stood on deck checking the fishing nets. They looked up at the same moment, their eyes meeting, a bad premonition rising in their hearts. Clara stepped onto the deck, still holding the tin coffee mug, the sea breeze tousling her hair. She squinted toward the horizon, where two large ships approached, one bearing the Callahan shipyard's emblem, the other a familiar white yacht she never wanted to see again. Stella Maris. Her heart tightened, her breath quickening. "They're back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan stepped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, his deep blue eyes now filled with tension but still resolute. "Not just my father," he said, his voice lowering as he eyed the two ships. "Your family's here too." He squeezed her hand tightly, as if to lend her the strength they'd both need in the hours ahead. The Callahan ship stopped first, anchoring a few dozen meters from blue horizon. Edward Callahan appeared on deck, his cold demeanor stark in a black suit, his silver hair neatly combed back. Beside him stood another man in a gray suit, Charles Moreau, Clara's father, with a tanned face and eyes sharp as a blade. On Stella Maris, Victor Grayson emerged, tall in a dark blue suit, the fake smile Clara had once despised reappearing on his lips. Three powerful men, representing two wealthy families, now united for a single purpose: to tear Clara and Ryan apart. The loudspeaker from the Callahan ship crackled, Edward's icy voice slicing through the sea air. "Ryan Callahan, the game's over. We've investigated everything. That girl, the impulsive wedding in Boothbay Harbor. Come back now, end the marriage with her, and take your place at Callahan Shipyards." Clara felt the blood in her veins turn cold. They knew about the marriage certificate signed under the dim lights of the town hall, about the rope ring on her finger. She glanced at Ryan, seeing him grip the railing, but his eyes didn't waver. Before he could respond, Charles Moreau's voice boomed from Stella Maris, deep and authoritative. "Clara, enough. You've shamed the family long enough. Return to Victor, apologize to him, and we'll pretend this never happened." Victor stepped forward, his voice smooth but brimming with arrogance. "Clara, you think running off with a poor sailor will save you? I'm the only one who can preserve your reputation. Come back before things get worse." Clara gripped Ryan's hand tighter, feeling as if the deck beneath her feet trembled despite the calm sea. She wanted to scream at them, at her father, Victor, Edward, that she didn't need reputation, didn't need money, didn't need the golden cage they called life. But before she could speak, Ryan's voice rang out across the water. "I've told you, Father, I don't want Callahan's shipyards. And Clara," he turned to her, his eyes alight, "she's my wife, not a puppet for you to control." Edward's lip curled, his gaze darkening. "You reject your inheritance? Fine. But if you don't end this marriage, I'll cut everything. Accounts, privileges, every tie to Callahan. You'll have nothing, Ryan." Charles Moreau interjected, his voice cold as steel. "And you, Clara, if you don't come back, the family will disown you. No wealth, no Moreau name, nothing. Do you want to live like a vagrant?" Clara felt her chest tighten. Disown. Those words stabbed her heart like a knife. She recalled her father's triumphant look on Stella Maris the night she fled, the years she'd lived to please him, to uphold the title of Moreau daughter. But then she looked at Ryan, saw the steadfast resolve in his deep blue eyes, and memories of their days at sea flooded her mind. The sound of waves, the sunlight, his smile. No, she didn't want to go back. Ryan turned to her, his voice low but certain. "We have to go to the harbor," he said. "They won't stop until we face them directly." Clara nodded, though her heart felt heavy. They raised anchor, steering Blue Horizon back to Boothbay Harbor, the two large ships trailing behind like unrelenting ghosts. When Blue Horizon docked at the familiar wooden pier, the harbor's faint golden lights bathed the deck, and Clara and Ryan stepped down, hand in hand. The two families were waiting. Edward and Charles stood on the pier, flanked by Victor and a group of men in black suits, clearly lawyers and security personnel. The air was thick, like the calm before a storm, the waves lapping the dock now a mere whisper against the pressure of the gazes fixed on them. Edward spoke first, his voice sharp as a blade. "We have court documents," he said, holding up a thick file. "This marriage isn't legal, signed impulsively, no valid witnesses. End it now or I'll sue you, Ryan." Charles stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Clara. "You have one last chance, Clara. Return to Victor or lose everything. The family hired detectives, knows it all. She's been living like a homeless drifter on that rotting boat. Is that what you want?" Victor smiled, stepping closer to Clara, his voice smooth but menacing. "I don't care what you've done with this guy, Clara. Come back, marry me, and your reputation will be saved. Don't make me force you." Clara felt a surge of anger ignite in her chest, hot and unstoppable. She let go of Ryan's hand, stepping forward to face all three men. "You want to know how I've been living?" she said, her voice trembling but strong, resonating in the chilly harbor air. "I've been truly living, for the first time in my life. On Blue Horizon, I wake up to seagulls, feel the sea breeze on my face, haul nets under the sun. I laugh, I breathe, I live. Not in the golden cage Father calls family, not beside someone like Victor, who sees me as a trophy to flaunt." She turned to her father, her eyes blazing. "You say I've shamed the family? No, Father, you've made me lose myself for 27 years. I don't need Moreau, don't need money, don't need reputation. I need freedom, and I've found it, with Ryan." Ryan stepped up beside her, his gaze locked on Edward. "I don't need Callahan shipyards," he said, his voice deep but firm as stone. "I don't need wealth, don't need power. I just need Clara and this boat. You want to sue me? Go ahead. But I won't end this marriage, ever." Edward laughed coldly, his voice dripping with disdain. "You'll regret this, Ryan. Without Callahan, you're nothing." He turned to Charles. "She's your problem." Charles looked at Clara, a flicker of wavering in his eyes, but it quickly hardened. "You've chosen this path, Clara, so don't expect the family to save you when you fail." He turned away, motioning to Victor and the lawyers. "We'll handle it through the courts." Victor gave Clara a final look, his fake smile gone, replaced by an angry glare. "You'll beg me to take you back, Clara," he said, then followed Charles onto Stella Maris. Edward departed too, the Callahan ship starting up, its engine echoing into the night. Clara and Ryan remained on the wooden pier, hand in hand, watching the two ships fade under the harbor lights. Silence enveloped them, broken only by the waves and their breathing. Clara felt her chest lighten, though her heart still raced from the words she'd spoken. She turned to Ryan, seeing him smile, that familiar lopsided grin, now brimming with pride. "We did it," she whispered, her voice catching. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight under the faint golden light. "We'll keep doing it," he replied, his voice steady. "No matter what they do, they can't take this away." Under the lights of Boothbay Harbor, Clara and Ryan stood firm, their eyes burning with determination to never part. The families might turn their backs, the lawyers might threaten, but they knew the love and freedom they'd found on the open sea was something no one could destroy. Chapter 6. The Light of Choice. They stood there hand in hand, watching the two families retreat, powerless against their steadfast resolve. The sea breeze blew through, carrying the salty tang and the peace they had chosen. Clara turned to Ryan, smiling. "We're free now," she said, her voice catching with emotion. Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, his warmth spreading through the worn t-shirt she was wearing. "We've always been free," he whispered, his voice deep and warm. "Now it's just official." Their life continued on Blue Horizon, free from the shadows of family or the pressures of the past. They returned to the open sea, where the deep blue waves and vast sky became their home. Each day was a new journey, radiant sunrises lighting up the deck, where Clara and Ryan hauled fishing nets together, laughing as seawater splashed their faces. They brewed coffee on the old gas stove, the scent of sea salt mingling with wood smoke filling the cabin. At night, they lay on the deck, gazing at a sky stretching endlessly with stars, the gentle lapping of waves like a song of freedom, lulling them into dreams of uncharted horizons. A month later, they opened a small boat repair shop in Boothbay Harbor, not to make big money, but to share the self-reliant life they loved. Local fishermen, men and women as rugged as the sea, came to learn how to fix engines, tie ropes, and survive storms without depending on anyone. Clara stood beside Ryan, her hands stained with engine oil, her hair tied high, laughing loudly as he teased her clumsiness with a wrench. They weren't rich, with no mansions or million-dollar accounts, but they were wealthy in their own way. Rich in freedom, rich in love, rich in days lived true to themselves. One winter evening, with a full moon hanging in the sky, Blue Horizon anchored far from any harbor in the open sea. The waves shimmered under the silver moonlight, like a boundless tapestry of light. Clara stood on the deck, hands gripping the railing, the cold wind making her shiver. Ryan emerged from the cabin holding a small wooden box, different from the old one that once held the Navy insignia she'd found. "Clara," he called, his voice deep but gentle, prompting her to turn around. He knelt on one knee, opening the box to reveal a simple silver ring glinting in the moonlight. Not a lavish diamond, but a handmade piece bearing the mark of the sea. "The first time we got married was on impulse," he said, his deep blue eyes looking straight into hers. "But this time, I want to marry you for love. Will you say yes?" Clara blinked, tears rolling down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from joy. She laughed loudly, the sound echoing across the still sea. "I choose you. I choose the sea forever," she said, her voice choking. Ryan stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, replacing the worn rope ring, and pulled her into a tight embrace. They stood there under the moonlight, the waves lapping gently like the ocean's blessing. Clara felt her heart complete, as if the sea had become their home, a place where no one could steal their happiness. The next day, Blue Horizon glided over the waves again, carrying Clara and Ryan away from Boothbay Harbor. The golden lights of the harbor faded behind them, giving way to the vast darkness of the open sea, where only they and the endless ocean remained. They stood on the deck, hand in hand, looking toward the horizon, a future not defined by family or wealth, but by the love and freedom they had chosen. the sound of waves, the singing wind, and their laughter blended into a melody of life. A life anyone would dream of experiencing, even just once. Clara and Ryan's story concludes, leaving us with the lesson that freedom and love are not easily won. They demand courage, sacrifice, and absolute trust in oneself and the one you love. They abandoned their family's golden cages to live on the open sea, where there was no wealth or prestige, but the boundless expanse of the ocean and the genuine love between two people. The greatest lesson is this: a life of freedom and true love can only exist when you dare to live true to your heart, despite all pressures from the outside world. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.